thank you for joining us at the ever-improving No Soundbites Allowed podcast. My name is Michael Vasquez. We thank you for joining us in this adventure of describing the politics that go on in our nation on a personal and local level as often as possible, giving you, the audience, more than just 30 seconds to understand what's going on in our nation. We look forward to joining you as we go. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. Please remember, if you like the episodes, like it, share it, let other people know, and if you can, please donate, even if it's $2, even if it's $5, because it all makes a difference. We thank you, and here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, it's afternoon as we're taping, and this is your favorite program on the internet. That's right. This is the No Soundbites Allowed podcast with your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I am happy to be here with you. I hope everyone had a great Labor Day weekend. We're back, and we have a great show for you today, because today I have a guest in the studio with us, and that is Mr. George Bezama. Say hello, George.
Morning, everyone.
All right. And George is with us, and it's going to be a very nice interview, I think. We're going to have some fun. George is actually he's been on the program before, and that's why I'm calling him George. Do you want me to call you Mr. Bezama?
I think George is fine.
Okay. George, you may have recalled I have spoken with him on the SUNY Broome Republicans. I think you've been in for 2 of our guest features at there, if I remember correctly. And people can look back, and I'll have the link in the description, but you can go back to the SUNY Broome Republicans podcast, and you'll be able to hear George with me and my host on that program, Michael Woodward. Now, for this program, though, we're speaking about most specifically the fact that you're a candidate. You're running for the 4th Legislative District in Broome County against Dan D. Reynolds. There's 2 Dan Reynolds in our Broome County legislature. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about that.
Absolutely.
But before we get into that, let me start off with, first of all, how was your weekend? Did you enjoy Labor Day?
It's a pretty good weekend.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And remember, you want to speak into the mic. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was a good weekend. I had a great time. I got to see some family and enjoy myself there. I hope you did the same. All right. I know you're, just to recap a little bit, actually, let me ask you to recap a little bit of who is George Bezama for anyone who hasn't heard the SUNY Broome Republicans podcast.
George Bezama is a lifelong New Yorker. He's lived in New York State his entire life. I've lived up here in Broome County for several years now. I graduated from the University at Albany several years ago with a degree in urban planning, background in economics. Worked in several public and private sector enterprises, tried to run an internet business, did several other volunteer around the community. Currently a member on the town planning board for the town of Vestal and on the community emergency response team.
Okay. So you live in the town of Vestal?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been in Vestal?
It would be a little difficult to run for the 4th district without running.
You'd be surprised what people do in elections sometimes.
That is true. But to your point.
Yeah. How long have you lived in the town of Vestal?
2 years now.
2 years. Okay. And I know that, and just going back over the history, are you still in Binghamton University? I know you were in Binghamton University at one point.
Yes, taking part-time classes.
Okay, so you're a current student there. How is that?
It's interesting. It's tough. It's pretty rigorous.
Okay. I know that you're running as a Republican in the race. Dan D. Reynolds is a Democrat, and he is the incumbent.
Yes.
Let me ask you, when you're on campus, how is it to be a conservative or a Republican? I know a lot of people look at universities and they often say, well, they're very liberal in their viewpoints. So since that doesn't seem to be what you would be, how's it feel?
I will say that is certainly the truth. There's the way I see it, I'm running to represent the town of Vestal. So my primary focus would be to listen to the residents of the town of Vestal as they live there permanently. The students are there for part of the year, and after 4 years, they get their degree and they go out. So I will say my primary concern, again, is listening to the concerns of the residents of the town of Estill. However, on campus, it is a little bit of a different environment. As on any campus in America, for the most part, you will be in the minority as a conservative, as a Republican. But I think if you know what your beliefs are, you know what you stand for, and you're willing to talk with anyone on campus, you can get your point across, and maybe even get a lot of your your student colleagues, your faculty on campus to listen to and maybe even agree with some of your points of view.
Okay. And I know that.
And I certainly encourage that.
Okay. So your plan is not to leave once you get your degree out of Binghamton University. I assume that's your master's degree. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So once you get your master's, you're planning to stay in Broome County.
Yes.
Okay. It's an interesting question. I know I've asked that of the city councilman. Oh my God, I forgot his name. Taylor, Councilman Taylor, Conrad Taylor.
I cannot guarantee that I will be here 20 years from now, but for the foreseeable future, absolutely.
Right. And I just want to say that I asked the Democrat Councilman Conrad Taylor that very same question, since he's also a student at Binghamton University. He ran for an office. So it's a fair question, and I want people to know that it's not picking on you. I ask anyone who happens to be a student and running for an office. Let me ask you, has anyone brought up, is that a challenge? Has anyone said that that's, just an odd thing, or is that taken as given?
If
like
just
they
to
just,
reiterate the
like
question.
no one, is anyone saying, oh, is that an issue?
No one has brought up that it's an issue. A lot of people are very excited. Hasn't spread throughout the entire campus yet. That will most likely happen in October.
Well, yeah, a lot of things happen in October.
But it's not the first time a student is running for a position in the county or in the area.
Like Conrad Taylor
and
has,
it seems to be a little more and more prevalent these years.
Yeah, there has been a trend of that. We've seen younger and younger people. Mark Molinaro started off his career in politics back when he was about 19, 20.
Yes.
So it's not unusual. But you're a little bit older than that. You're in your 20s. You don't have to be exact. I don't want to put you on the spot about that.
Late 20s stuff.
Late 20s. So a little more life experience than, say, when he started or when Mr. Taylor started. He was also he was under 21. So there is some life experience there. And you said you owned a business. What was it?
I was selling household electronics on eBay and making a little money off of that on the side.
Well, a lot of people do that nowadays. It's a new industry that came up in the last roughly 10 years. And I know a lot of people have done that. Some people have been very successful. It's a highly competitive.
It is it's difficult business to be in.
Definitely. Yeah. So it gives us a little idea. And did the economics background help with that?
I would say a business background may have helped a little bit more, but you learn along the way. As with any time you run your own business, I think you learn along the way.
Gives a lot of life experience.
It does, whether you're just putting the blueprint together when you're actually running the business. And we're looking at 2 blueprints right now for 2 different ideas. So it's a lot of work, but if you don't put the effort, you don't put the time in, it's a trajectory of self-growth.
Yeah, that's true of everything in life, that normally you're always going to have that experience where, look at the best businessmen that we know of. They've all had failures. They've all built from that. Experience is the best teacher and leads to the greatest success. How else can you, if you've never dealt with something, how can you handle it?
Exactly.
Especially in a business aspect. So I can see that. What's your master's going to be in?
It's an MBA.
An MBA. Okay. So that also falls into the business structure. So you have a very business-oriented approach to the way you look at politics, I'm assuming.
Well, I do have a background in the public sector as well. I've worked for the planning department in several counties before.
Oh, I'm going to get to that.
So it's interesting, 2 different separate backgrounds, and you just compare and contrast what your knowledge base, and second, your experiences.
Right. And by the way, folks, as always, you can hear in the background the little puppy. That's Khan. So you hear him every so often, so don't mind that. And speaking of your experience in the business and government, you mentioned you're with the planning board. How long have you been doing that?
I've been on the board since last September,
Okay.
September 2017.
So about a year. We're going to be looking at a year.
Yes.
And how have you found that experience?
Very interesting. We take a look at all submitted proposals in the town of Estill. You meet a lot of great people on the board, on the town board as well. You work alongside them. You go through the environmental reviews for these submitted proposals. You take a look and see how the whole process really works.
It's a hands-on experience with government. And have there been any big projects or anything that you've worked on that got approved or denied either?
I was not on the board when some of the very large-scale proposals came through. For example, a couple of years back, there was the proposal for the Walmart, the shopping plaza.
Well, that's a few years ago.
It was a few years ago, and everyone said that was a major decision.
Oh, yeah.
The meetings ran all night.
Oh, yeah.
So
There's a lot to be considered with that. But obviously, that's a huge scale. But is there anything on a lesser scale that you may have done?
For the most part, we just had a couple expansions of some offices in the area. Nothing particular that comes to mind.
Okay. Well, you never know until you ask. I mean, sometimes there's
That's
there's a lot of development in Vestal, and there's been a lot of growth and new businesses back and forth. So you never know until you ask about which one you may have been involved with. So you have a little experience in government. You have some experience in education and the private sector. So it's a lot of different areas for someone who's under 30. It's kind of impressive.
Thank you. I try to do what I can. I like keeping busy. Definitely, I like as I said, doing things here and there. I like a variety of experiences. I feel if you become, a lot of people, let's say, I know people who are engineers and they specialize in one field only, but I'm not that type of person. I like to have a little, let's say, maybe you could call it a jack of all trades, but I don't think I'm that quite. But definitely having experience and knowledge in a multitude of fields is useful for anyone.
Can never hurt. It can never hurt to know more.
I do not think it hurts anyone. Now, if you want to specialize in one or two fields, that's more power to you.
Well, of course. And that's never a bad thing. Everyone grows and develops into whatever those specialties may be. I think we all get them, at least by my age. I'm a lot older than you. But now I'm looking at the overall growth and difference. But this is your first time running for an elected office. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, we can always, we're not going to count student government, let's say.
I am.
A while back.
I am. But I'm talking about elected office in terms of outside an education field, but or an education institution, but in the general public.
Yes, this is my first time running for office.
Okay. But you did run earlier this year, in April, at Binghamton University for the Governor's Council. Is that right?
University Council, yes. It was a short race. It's an important position on campus. They have a pretty good representative who won that race.
Yeah, so. It was very competitive. There were 4 people in that race, as I recall. You were the first-year graduate student. There were 3 other individuals, another first-year graduate, as well as a couple of juniors that were in there. So a lot of difference, a couple of political science majors. I believe you were the only one who was actually in business administration. How was that? How was that experience?
It was fun. I love talking to the students. So I'm going to definitely use that experience and take it from there. Well, even though I was the last person to enter that race, so it was literally, I decided 3 days before. It was just to put my name on that. But it's certainly a different position.
Right. So. Well, did that give you experience to deal with, I know this summer you've been out. I know in August you made the official announcement of your run, but you had already gotten petitions. You had already been out speaking to constituents in the 4th District, 4th Legislative District. Did that experience at Binghamton University help you with dealing with your, hopefully, future constituents?
Yes, it did. Definitely. Once you learn how to get people up, voters' petitions, get their signatures, although you learn that helping out all our candidates, and I have did a little bit of that as well in the past. But you learn to have a good conversation with people and to listen to one or two important points and everyone has different points that they want seen, whether on campus or in the town of Vestal. So absolutely, it helped.
You said you worked with other campaigns before in the past. Can you say who or when?
Several downstate campaigns. I've volunteered with their campaigns. We've had a campaign for Congress Phil Oliva in the Hudson Valley. Had for Assembly Kevin Byrne. Had several smaller campaigns.
Okay. So you've had that experience of being involved in an election campaign, being involved in volunteering, and being part of the process.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone upstate?
Well, we had last year. We had the campaign for mayor for the city of Binghamton.
Mayor Rich David.
Mayor Rich David, correct. So I was involved with that campaign, and I was also involved with the campaign for county clerk.
Joe Mahalko.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I know both of those won.
Yes.
So good success is there, the help. So the help obviously did work.
Looks like it definitely did.
Yeah, well, they won, so take the credit. Why not, right? And that's always an important thing. But did that experience in the elections, working with them downstate, with the mayor and the county clerk for Mr. Mahalko, did that give you, as well as with Binghamton University and the Pipe Dream, did that help shape your views about what it is you would do as a legislator?
Gave me ideas on how to run a campaign.
Well, as a campaign or just your views in general on what your goals are? Generally,
my goals, I take all the information from all my activities, as I said, and I take a look around at what's going on in the town of Vestal and Broome County, and I put together my platform based on that information. In addition to the information I'm collecting through a survey I'm doing of my residents, we're asking them what are the two big issues that they want to see fixed or focused on in the next 2 years in the town of Vestal and Broome County. So I'm collecting that information and compiling it, and we're adding that to the platform.
Okay, so you're actually reaching out to the constituents to say what are their concerns and what are their issues, and that's to better serve them?
Absolutely. That's my job.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm trying to understand, and that's a great explanation of part of what your outlook is. Do you have any idea what they've been targeting so far?
Well, so far, the first and foremost issue that comes up is the property taxes. Mm-hmm. They don't want increases. They want them, if some people want them lower, and the vast majority want them to stay what they are now and make sure that they're used properly.
Well, that is absolutely everyone I know of. I don't know anyone in New York State that's saying, please increase my taxes, although we do have many candidates that are out there, including Governor Cuomo and some others, and Cynthia Nixon and a few others who have come out and said that they look at increasing taxes as a necessity. I don't know any individual.
Which would be rather detrimental.
Yeah, I don't know anyone, especially in the southern tier, Broome County, Central New York region, that also wants to have that.
Certainly not.
Yeah.
Certainly not.
So that's, and I know that's actually one of, when you made your announcement, both on August 8th, when you made the announcement through Fox 40 News, a local news station, as well as I heard your speech that you gave on August, I believe it was August 22nd. You had mentioned several goals, certain your platform, which included,
yes,
as you mentioned, the primary thought was property taxes and whether or not they would be raised or lowered or kept the same, cutting bureaucracy, and also cutting excessive administrative costs,
Well, we do. If you look at the county, we have about
Yeah.
50 departments listed under the county. And I'm trying to take a look, and we have 200,000 people in this county.
Right.
And I just don't see personally, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm looking, you don't need 50 departments to run a county of 200,000 people. I've heard of many counties where you can run 40 or even maybe 30 departments.
Okay.
So it's something that needs to be taken
are we
a
outside?
closer look at.
Are we outside the norm?
I don't know if we're outside the norm or not, but I can certainly say that I've seen examples where you can run a county of that size with less departments than what we currently have.
Okay, so there may be some governmental waste and
No, I don't want to
redundancy.
I don't want to use specific examples though. So I'll take a look again and just see how it compares to the stats.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if New York State, given its bureaucracy, and we all know New York State has a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, it wouldn't surprise me if there are redundancies that are built in there and that other counties have reduced that redundancy at least as much as Governor Cuomo will allow to be able to run more efficiently and less costly. Is there a specific department that you've looked at that you said, hey, I want to get rid of this or that, or is that based on the survey?
I have not made any specific statements to that regard. I'm going to be, in addition to campaigning, I'm going to try to visit several of these departments in the next couple of weeks and just take a look.
So you're taking a hands-on approach.
I will try. Oh. Absolutely.
Trying to get hands-on, see exactly what's going on before. Yes. So it's not just a blanket, oh, this is what I'm going to do. It's actually involved process of going through the process and seeing exactly what's going on there.
Well, it will give me an idea before coming in, before, let's say, January, because I feel you should know what is going on beforehand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. And I think that's important, whether you're a first-time candidate or whether you've been in office for multiple terms, like your opponent has and other candidates throughout the Southern tier. It's always important to say, hey, let me actually be involved in that process. Let me make sure I know what's going on to make that decision. So I can understand that completely. I did want to ask you a question because you made in your speech that I covered in some of the news covered back on August 22nd, you had said, and I'm quoting now, quote, owning private property is one of the pillars of the American dream. If this is made unaffordable to families across the state, then the American dream is made ever more unattainable. What reason do people have to continue to work and fight every day, if not for the chance to succeed in achieving their dreams? It is our duty as elected government to ensure the conditions are such so that people may achieve their dreams and that this is the norm rather than the exception, end quote. Recall the quote? Okay.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what you said there. Please expand on that a little bit.
Well, the American dream, the American dream is the way the American people see it, in my opinion. Again, this is my opinion, but I think a lot of people can agree on that, is owning a house with a white picket fence, maybe not necessarily, but definitely owning a house, having a car or two cars in the driveway, having a job, kids. So one of the critical components of that is that owning that home. Yes.
Right. That's the American dream.
Yes.
I do. So, I own it. I know many people want to own theirs. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. And people work every day to own that home. That's the first step. Then you have your car, your kids. Well, you need the car first to get to your job.
Most people
not necessarily. Yeah. It is New York after all.
I don't use a car personally, so
exactly.
But
and
I
closer
understand.
to the city, I know many people who just use the train or public transit. So yes, it depends where you are.
But I understand the theme.
So that is optional. But the house is one of the primary components of that.
Absolutely.
And first, you need to, as I said, you have to get savings in order to put a down payment for the home, and then once you own your home, you have to pay every year in order to own you have to pay taxes.
Property taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And if the property taxes keep going up and up and up, as I stated in my speech, well, it does become unaffordable to live in your own home, I mean, you could be using that money to pay off the mortgage and actually own the home after a while instead of saying
that always helps. Yeah,
Exactly.
Every dollar I save can go to that mortgage. Yeah,
or you can use it to put it into an account for your kids' education in the future or whatever.
Investing for retirement. That's another thing.
Another big issue. Investing in your 401k, life insurance, wherever you have it. You can invest it in the market if you want as well. Whatever. Instead, it's going to the property tax, which usually we're at, as I mentioned, the average in New York State is 2.23% of the assessed value of the home.
Right.
In many states, it's between 0.5 and 1%. Now, I don't think we can run all the services that we need in this county or the state at those levels, but we can certainly look at ways to bring it lower to something a little more affordable. There's so many people in the state that are leaving because of the high taxes.
1.2 million people over the last 8 years, approximately 120,000 people per year to achieve the goal, as Governor Cuomo stated in his debate with Cynthia Nixon, to make New York the progressive capital of the nation. We've lost a lot of people, tens of thousands of businesses, over $1.3 trillion in tax revenue. So yeah, we've lost a lot.
Exactly. And then this is, in my opinion, this is a bad weight use of resources. I mean, we use all those taxes they go to the school taxes. So we educate these people. Everyone's educated. We have one of the best education systems in the country here in New York State, especially in terms of, I'm not going to comment too much on, let's say, some of our social studies programs, but definitely in terms of engineering, hard sciences, we have a pretty good education system still. So What is the point? We educate people in this state and then they realize it's so expensive that they take their skills and move to another state.
It's one of the big problems we have going on right now.
It is an issue.
Yeah. Now, that opens up a couple of questions for what you're looking to do, and we're going to go into a little bit more of the future goals, what you're going to do if you get elected as legislator. But we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back, and then we'll continue. And by the way, I again got to say, I thank Mr. Bezama, George, for coming in and speaking with us to let the constituents know about you. I know you're out normally at this time, actually reaching out and speaking with the constituents, so you took some time off to speak with me, and I do thank you for that.
My pleasure.
But we'll definitely get you back in the next segment to speak a little bit more about your goals, if elected, and what you can do for the town of Estill and the entire Broome County community. But we'll take a quick musical break, and then we'll be right back.
I ain't had you waste. I don't even remember how you taste on my lips. Used to be something I needed. Now I see I had a reason. I was bummed out, stressed out, yeah. Think you made me feel the best I had. For a minute I thought I needed you. Now I'm seeing through all of the reasons that I made up in my head. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the habits that I had, 'cause of where it's got me. Searching for myself, didn't know I lost me. I ain't no saint. Let the devil have a way. I regret it every day. I was bummed out, stressed out, yeah. Think you made me feel the best I had. For a minute I thought I needed you. Now I'm seeing through all of the reasons that I made up in my head. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us back at the No Sound Bites Allowed podcast, where I have my guest, George Bezama in. We're talking about the 4th District Legislative race for 2018, and he is a candidate, a first-time candidate, and we are very happy to have him here. And as always, we're happy to have you, our audience, here with us as we talk about all of the issues that matter to you. That's why we're here for no sound bites. We're here for the full ideas to really understand what's going on in our government and who's involved with it. So I thank you for that. Now, in the last segment, we had left off, and we were just getting into a little more deeply about what you're looking to do. We were talking about property taxes. That's one of the big issues you mentioned that your constituents or your future constituents are mentioning to you is an issue. It's one of the things that you mentioned in a speech that you provided. And by the way, everyone go to the mvass.com and you can see that speech from August 22nd. I just noticed there's a couple of typos in there. That's my fault, not your speech. That's just my typos, and I'll correct that in a minute. So let's look at what are the things, if you are elected as legislator for the 4th District here and affecting all of Broome County, what are some of the things that you hope to achieve?
Well, in addition to maintaining the property taxes as they are and not a single vote for an increase, I'd like to actually use them to... One of the things I'd like to focus on is repairing some of the infrastructure in our county. A lot of people, especially north of Vestal Parkway, we have flooding with only 3 or 4 inches of rainfall, which is expected, especially here. We're a very high rainfall county for the most part. And people get flooding with, as I said, 3 or 4 inches of rain. So we need to overhaul some of the sewers and the runoff systems in the town of Vestal to prevent that problem, because we can't allow that to continue to happen.
Is it that bad?
In some areas, it actually is that bad.
Yeah. Wasn't there recently flooding just about 2 weeks ago?
There was. That was there.
Did that hit? How bad did that hit Vestal?
Well, it hit Conklin. Vestal, that did not hit that bad. So Vestal was, for the most part, spared as far as I know. But I know Conklin, I know Binghamton, city of Binghamton, north of the river, also had a lot of flooding, definitely. However, the rainfall, again, shouldn't be a problem. And I don't know exactly what the issue is with the sewers there, so I'm still looking at that. But they need... We've heard some of the piping in some areas was not done the way it should have been done. So now when you whether accidentally or somehow put the wrong size of the pipes in some area and the drains, and then you have to go back and take that out and put it.
Well, that's really costly. When you have to go back and redo it. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a lot of work to rip up the roads, rip up property, pull it out, put in a new one, and reinstall it. That can add up really quick. Anyone who's done any work on their house to renovate or add something, it's a huge expense. And there always winds up being some X thing that you didn't realize that suddenly you have to do. And now you got to fix that too. And it just drives the cost. It's always cost more.
There's always a cost overrun, unfortunately, with those. And you do a study and somehow it doesn't show up in the study. There's always some omission that someone forgot. So it's a complicated issue. I'm not an engineer, see if I can talk to some experts and see what they say.
Okay, I can understand it. Now, I also know that one of your other things, not just the roads and rain and the sewers, you've also mentioned that, I guess you can call this infrastructure as well, of a different sort, rather than the physical infrastructure of Broome County and Vestal in particular. There's also the mental infrastructure. And by that, I mean the Vestal Public Library. The
social infrastructure. We can call it social infrastructure.
Social infrastructure. And that would be one of those components. I know you've said that you're a supporter of that, and I know it's had some difficulty with funding. What are you looking to do with that?
Well, I'd like to get either a grant from the state or an NGO to fix the Vestal Library, make it look a little more modern, definitely repaint it.
An NGO?
There's a...
What's an NGO? Just for people who don't know.
An NGO is a non-governmental organization.
Okay. So go on. Yeah. Just for those who don't know what that is.
To clarify, absolutely. It's a very good term to know. It's
used a lot in politics.
Many such entities, yes. Yeah. And anyone who doesn't know, definitely look it up. But to get a grant to fix the library, I think it's outside the university. It's one of the most important civic centers in the town of Vestal. Yeah. We have a lot of events. There's cultural events. There's political events. There's many different kinds of events for kids going on at the library, and it's in a little state of neglect, I would say. So I think the people of Vestal would really appreciate if we can get such a grant, make it a lot more beautiful, a lot more welcoming for the next couple of years.
Well, I know there's a lot of organizations, one in particular that I know of, the Americans for the Restoring the Constitution, or AFRTC. They have monthly meetings there. I know a lot of other groups do rent out part of the library to have public meetings and to have more discourse, as well as, kids going into the library to be able to actually read books, which we don't see enough of, I personally believe, these days. And having that access to information that they might otherwise run into. So I can see where that's a very important social infrastructure issue. And I know a lot of people do support that. So that's interesting that that's one of your targets. Kind of going along with that, I believe, is, the more informed people are, the more knowledge and information they have, the less we tend to see of crime. And it may be a correlation, or it may be just an observation. But I tend to see that in my experience, when the more information and education and knowledge an individual has, the less likely they are to commit crimes. And I know you're, as you had mentioned publicly, you're a supporter of fighting crime. Is there a lot of crime in Vestal? Not really. There's not. It affects certain other areas of Broome County a little more than the town of Vestal. Mm-hmm. But as I will be making decisions for the entire county. It is an important issue to keep in mind. We have not only just regular crimes per se, but as you know, we have also an opioid epidemic that's making things worse. That is directly correlating where opioid abuse and crime go hand in hand.
It is.
That is well documented. And you're right. And that's why I'm asking, because even though it may not affect Vestal per se, it's still affecting Broome County, which ultimately comes back and still affects Vestal, and whether it's cost or whether it's the migration of crime or the potential of addiction. All of these things are interconnected.
All the towns are interconnected, yes. Yeah. And so this is definitely an issue that has to be addressed. There's been some talk that then the most important thing first in fighting crime is enforcing the current laws.
Okay, because they went a different way. Under County Executive Jason Garnar, under, I think, the legislature, they approved the Center for the Rehabilitation, the medical. They're taking a medical approach to it. And you're looking at it from a law enforcement only, or is there a mix? Or
I would say first, law enforcement. People have to know that there's laws on the books, and the laws will be enforced. Otherwise, eventually, you let people get off leeway. It keeps building up and building up on itself until people have no longer any respect for the laws. So that cannot be allowed to pass.
Right.
Once people understand that, there's other elements to reducing crime and poverty and other issues. As you said, education, very important. So people should be educated. People should be informed. It's not merely just formal education these days. You can self-educate on the internet as well these days.
True.
And, just encourage people to do that. It's a great thing. Sports programs are another great way.
True. After school programs. Yeah.
Absolutely. So all these things work in conjunction to fix that problem.
Well, we hope so.
But
that's the goal. That's always the goal.
Yes. However, again, there's some candidates feel that maybe the sheriff's department should not have as much, not focus as much on enforcing the current laws and do some other things. I disagree with that.
Which candidate are you speaking about? Or if you don't want to say, that's fine.
Well, I believe one of the candidates in the sheriff's race has made several comments to that.
Well, the only one that would be Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, who's running as the working families candidate. Basically, he's the Citizen Action candidate, which is a far left or splinter of the Democratic Party. And Mr. Ryan has said, and I personally know Matt Ryan. He's the former mayor of Binghamton, so I know him personally. And I am quoting him when he's mentioned on WNBF that he believes that the sheriff's position is going to be a social justice advocate position for him if he wins. So basically, he's going to be going out there and trying to promote social justice issues, kind of like white people should apologize for being white and white privilege and not enforcing laws for those who are minorities because it's part of that white privilege issue and some other aspects of social justice and not law enforcement. So that's what he said, just so people have full context. And I've even have audio tape of him speaking on the news about this, both on this program, no sound bites allowed, as well as on the mvass.com. People can check that out. So I believe that's the reference because he's the only. The Sheriff Harder does not, who's the incumbent, does not hold that same opinion.
Exactly. I mean, this is I feel we should fully support the Sheriff's Department and just give them the resources they need to do that. Hopefully create a plan to, as I said, tackle the opioid epidemic.
Yeah,
and enforce the current laws on the book as they are.
Yeah, and your quote actually from the 22nd was that the sheriff's, I'm quoting here, quote, the sheriff's department exists to uphold the existing law, not to serve as a moral crusade, end quote.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I do remember that from the 22nd. It's nice to see a candidate who's consistent when being asked about these things, separate from when they actually make a speech. So I like that, and that's always important. Consistency is something that's important about that.
Well, I try to be consistent on the issues. That's why my approach is simple. Like, if I don't know enough about an issue, I'll say, like, I don't know enough about that issue. I'm going to try to research it more, get more information, and go from there. But if I feel I have enough information to make my judgment on that issue, then I'll take a position, and I most likely won't change it.
Okay.
Unless I get some radical new information that somehow my position was entirely wrong. But that would take a lot of effort. I will say that. So
that's part of the process. Is we got to have that information.
Usually, once I get a position, I have my reasons for it.
Right, so. And that makes sense. Once we get the information, we can make decisions about that. In fact, that kind of leads a little bit to another thing that you've mentioned a couple of times in some of the research I've done, is that you are in favor of term limits. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, not to get too much into this, but definitely I feel the longer someone is in power, in a position of an official position, the more they get comfortable with that position, the more encourages corruption in the system.
Mhm.
People get too comfortable in it. There's no change. If there's new ideas that need to be, brought up, they're not brought up. It creates a stagnant system. Really, it creates stagnancy in the system, and that no system is going to continue to improve and, as we said, stimulate growth if it's stagnant. So I think term limits are currently, at least, the best way I see of preventing corruption in government, preventing such stagnancy as well.
Right. Well, we've seen that in New York State, obviously. There's the corruption of, or the alleged corruption of the Cuomo administration. We see New York is a very, very blue state. And you see that because of that and that stagnancy, those extended terms, individuals who've made a career out of politics in downstate now control all of New York with very little concern. I mean, that was an example highlighted by, again, going back to the Cuomo-Nixon debate, where upstate was not even mentioned. It was not a concern. And they were focusing on that downstate because that's where a lot of the control of the New York State Assembly is. So I can see how that plays into it, that stagnancy that you're mentioning, because it's stagnant. The control is downstate, not upstate, in a state that has 19 million people, as many people upstate as there are downstate. So that's an important thing. And I know now how does that apply to your challenge? The incumbent.
Well, the way I see it, my opponent, he's been in office for 12 years now.
Yeah.
So, he could be the best person in the world, but I don't trust people who have been in one single office for more than 10 years. Maybe if we're talking about the U.S. Senate, it's a little different. Then I think, let's say, that I'm not going to get into that too much. Let's say maybe 3 terms is a good maximum.
Well, that's a
there.
slightly different
but it
race.
is an absolutely different animal that we're talking about. But here at local level, 2-year terms, more than 10 years is plenty of time to have your impact on the community, see it, get your agenda done, and then you step out of the public light or do something else or go for some other office.
And I should mention,
otherwise you effectively become a career politician.
True.
With each additional term, more and more so.
Yeah, we see that a lot, and New York is known for its career politicians.
Well, I've said I will set an example, and I'm only going to serve 2 terms in the county legislature.
Okay. Now, I should mention that just for clarity, because I know people get confused about this a lot, there's 2 Dan Reynolds in our Southern Tier Broome County legislature. There is Dan J. Reynolds, who happens to be a Republican and is the chairman of the legislature. And then there's your opponent, who is the incumbent, Dan D. Reynolds. He's the one who's been in for 12 years and who you're running against, and he's a Democrat. So there is a difference, and people see it on the ballot. I want them to be clear. We're talking about Dan D. Reynolds, the Democrat, not the Republican. So when they see that, they know which race we're talking about and which person.
Correct.
And that's because of the similarity of the names. We have to make sure that's very clear for people so when they're looking at the ballots, they understand. Because you are a Republican, as we mentioned before, not a Democrat.
Yes.
So they know which race.
Difference in district number as well.
Yeah,
I'm
4.
District 4, and the other one is District 5.
Yes. So, again,
it
similar.
It doesn't hurt to clarify.
Right. I always want clarity so people know exactly what they're looking at in this race. And you're in the Republican Party. How long have you been a Republican?
It's been, I believe, 6 years now.
Right. So pretty much all the time you've ever been able to vote.
Not quite, but the majority of the time, yes.
Well, a lot of people switch as they learn about themselves, especially 18 to 21 is usually a time, who is absolutely sure of what their life is going to be like and what they actually believe at 18?
Most people do not even know themselves or what they want or what, where they're going at the age of 18. That is.
I sure didn't.
So.
I sure didn't. And most people I know don't. So quite understandable.
Some do, but it's a very small amount.
Yeah, it's not the majority. I think most of us will say most of us were not sure of what was going to happen next or what we wanted to do next in life at that time. So you've had a lot of experience. You've gone in a lot of different directions. And I think we've highlighted a few different things. And I like to give extra time, if possible, to first-time candidates because they don't always get a lot of attention in the media. They don't get a lot of exposure as per an incumbent who's already got an office and can easily get on the news or be interviewed because there's something existing that they're working on or just because they have the title. So I always like to let people know a little bit more about a first-time candidate. I know it can be a little bit tough asking these, and I'm known for asking tougher questions. It's hard sometimes to be able to answer them because it's not what people are used to. It's not like a practice, 12 years in. I'm sure Mr. Reynolds, who's invited to come in and do an interview as well, I'm sure he would have a different time and we'd have slightly different questions because he knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for a while. But let me ask at the same time, is there a subject or an issue or just anything that we haven't covered so far that you would like to share with your hopefully future constituents as well as the public in general?
I have to say, so far we've covered the vast majority of the important issues.
I try. I do try.
I would say. As I said, I'll stick to my platform. I know what I'm running for. I know that my platform will work for the residents of the county and the town of Vestal. If they have any questions or concerns, they can feel free to call me on my number, or they can go to my website, georgebezama.com, and they can take a look at my platform, my background. It's all on the website. You can also contact me, send me a message through there, and I should respond within 48 hours.
Okay.
So I'll be more than happy to do that.
All right. And that's George Bezama. That's BEZAMA.com. That correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So they can go there and see more information about you, and that provides a way to contact you. You mentioned there's also a phone number. What would that be?
Yeah. My phone number would be 607-684-3070.
607.
684-3070.
Yeah, it's always easy we all rattle it off, but I know when people are listening, it's like,
I'm not going to guarantee that I get back to you in, let's say, 2 o'clock in the morning. But
no. And no one should call you at 2 in the morning.
Absolutely.
Unless you just won $1 million, or the house is burning down, then 2 o'clock in the morning is acceptable. Anything else can wait for regular business hours.
Yes, but I would be happy to answer everyone's questions.
Oh, absolutely. And that's always a good thing. And people should be respectful about that when they're looking at it. I obviously take into account you have work, you have a campaign to do as well. So balancing that, let's all be respectful about the way we contact any of our candidates or elected officials when they're in office, when they provide us such a wonderful way to reach them. So I always like to mention that. So we know the website. We know. Do you have a Twitter?
I do not have a Twitter.
Oh, okay. Is there any other way to reach you, or is there any other contact or any other content that I missed?
For the most part, we've covered, I think, a lot of the main issues, as I said.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered the property taxes. We've covered the crime. We've covered the infrastructure in the county. We covered the library. We covered the departments. We've covered so.
Yeah, we've covered pretty much everything. But I always like to make sure, and again, I like to give the opportunity, especially for someone who's first-time race, getting involved there, getting out there. Want to make sure we can let people know everything about you. And we've had an hour here, so which is, again, I thank you for the time to be able to share this with the public. But we always want to make sure we give you that voice to get everything out there. And of course, you're always welcome back on the program. You've been here before. 2 times
Absolutely.
before. And I've had many a conversation with you in the past since those meetings on the SUNY Broome Republicans, which I do advise people to listen to as well, to even get even more of a personal background, know a little bit more about you. And you're always welcome to come back on the program. One thing I would ask, do you know if Dan D. Reynolds, the Democrat, has he said he would do a debate with you? Are you looking forward to that?
So far, I have not heard of any such information or news regarding a debate. But if we were interested in doing a debate, I would be willing to do one.
That would be interesting. And I think it's good always for the public to be able to hear the people who are looking for their vote answering questions, that directly answering people. So it helps keep them accountable, as well as giving us a little more interest in
Absolutely.
contact us.
Absolutely. It's very important to put the issues in front of the public and have them decide based on, and just meet your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on the national level, it's absolutely imperative.
Well,
I don't know exactly.
And got to know who's doing what on the national level. Absolutely. Is there any event that's coming up that you're going to be at that people can be able to see you at or interact with you?
There's several events in October. There's a couple races charity races in Vestal that I will definitely be at.
What's the next thing coming up?
But the next thing, I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to look at my calendar. I always look at that every morning.
That's all right. I don't remember everything I'm doing every day either. It happens. There's a lot of information. I'm already writing 3 speeches right now, so I know
I will say occasionally I even check my phone and get an event 2 days before the event actually happens, and I try to make time, make an hour for it. So
I know you do try to get out to a lot of events throughout the region as much as possible. I've personally seen it and been there with you at various events. So I do know you try to get out there, but do let us know. And with that, though,
absolutely.
What I want to say is, again, I thank you for taking the time to allow my audience and everyone out there to know a little bit more about you. And they'll be able to hear this and listen to it and go over it and hopefully ask you questions. And we look forward to maybe even hearing a debate, because that'll be interesting. I always like that. But I do want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us on the No Sound Bites Allowed podcast. By the way, how did you feel about the interview? You had a good time?
It was a great time. Great time. I want to thank you for having me on the show. It's been fun, as I said. I'll probably be back at some point in the future.
After the election.
Definitely.
After the election, let's have you back and
absolutely
talk about the experience of having gone through that.
Absolutely will happen.
Oh, absolutely. All right, folks. So we thank you for being here. We're going to be back soon with even more information. Like I said, there's an upcoming speech on September 10th. I'll be speaking at the SUNY Broome campus in Titchener Hall, room 108 at 1 p.m., talking about the First Amendment and social media. I think it's going to be a great speech. I'm looking forward to everyone being there. And, of course, I'll be doing a podcast on that, plus some other issues, in particular Kaepernick. And I didn't even get into that with you, George, but Kaepernick and that expression of the First Amendment, which is a huge other podcast that I'm going to do on that. And you're more than welcome to come back in or call in and we'll go over that. But with that said, nice little tease for you all. I hope everyone is well. I'm glad that everyone had a great Labor Day weekend. And I look forward to speaking with you again very, very soon.
Excuses why we cannot do this face to face, and then we cry, wonder why we ain't on the same damn page. If there's one thing I know, it's that this world keeps turning, no one seems concerned. Whoa, it's that this world keeps turning. One thing I learned, 'cause mama don't sleep at night since the sun done up and died. Ain't no brother's keeper, and no one looking out for the sisters neither. And these families ain't no families, and no one giving second chances. I don't understand why it seems like this world keeps turning, no one seems concerned. Yeah, lately I'm feeling like wasted. No, I don't understand why we could have it all and throw it all away. Just cause everything we want don't go our way. Why? Why? Just take a look outside, people losing lives. I'm just trying to see this world is much bigger than you and I. Lady, I'm feeling like we could make this all okay. No excuses, girl, we need to find a way and take our time and do this right before this all fades away. Cause if there's one thing I learned, it's that this world keeps turning. If there's one thing I learned, it's that this world keeps turning. No one seems concerned. It's that this world keeps turning. No one seems concerned. It's that this world keeps turning. No one seems concerned.